Before we dive into the most dangerous prison in America, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Trust me, Angola Prison isn't just a prison. It's a nightmare that no one escapes. Now, let's get into it. The sun was beginning to set over the Louisiana countryside, casting long shadows over Angola Prison, the infamous supermax facility known for housing the state's most dangerous criminals. But as dusk fell, something far more sinister was unfolding behind its walls. Inside the prison's labyrinthine corridors, a commotion broke out. Guards were rushing, their radios crackling with an urgent call. Code Red! Code Red! Inmate escape in progress. But that's where the story took a turn. The escape didn't happen the way it should have. There were no broken fences, no getaway cars waiting in the shadows. Instead, a chilling discovery was made deep within the prison's confines. A bloody trail leading straight into one of the most feared sections of Angola, the solitary confinement units, known as the death row cells. But when the guards arrived, the area was eerily quiet. Inside the solitary confinement cell, an inmate named Dwayne Jackson, a man who had been locked away for over a decade, was found lifeless, his body hanging from the ceiling, an apparent suicide. But something didn't sit right. The way his arms were positioned, the look on his face, it didn't feel like a typical prison suicide. And that was just the beginning of the mystery. The more the guards investigated, the more troubling details emerged. No one could explain how Dwayne managed to take his own life without anyone noticing. The guards had been on constant watch, yet the suicide had happened in plain sight. But what caught the investigators off guard was the note found in Dwayne's hand. It was scrawled in shaky handwriting. "You can never leave. The walls will always keep you here." As the authorities began to investigate further, they realized this was no ordinary inmate death. The prison had its secrets so deep, even the most hardened criminals feared what lay beyond the walls. And Dwayne Jackson's death was just the tip of the iceberg. The story of Angola Prison was one of fear, power, and control. Founded on the harshest of rules, Angola had earned a reputation not just for its brutality, but for its unspoken hierarchy. Inmates feared what happened within its walls, and they feared even more the authority of the prison's unseen hands. These hands were not the guards, nor the warden. They were something far darker. The highest levels of the prison system weren't controlled by the staff, but by the inmates themselves. There were whispers of a secret group, an underground syndicate that controlled nearly everything that went on inside Angola's walls. It was a group feared even by the guards, who knew better than to intervene. Some said it was a prison gang. Others claimed it was a shadowy figure who operated behind the scenes, pulling the strings from the dark corners of the facility. As Detective Sarah Matthews, a seasoned investigator, was called in to look into Dwayne Jackson's suspicious death, she realized that something larger was at play. The more she dug into the prison's operations, the more she uncovered disturbing truths about Angola. Every cell, every corridor, every corner seemed to be linked to the deep-rooted system of power that kept the prison's inmates in a state of constant fear. Sarah was no stranger to dangerous places. She had investigated notorious gangs and brutal crimes before. But Angola was different. This prison wasn't just a facility for punishment. It was a fortress built on psychological terror. And it wasn't just the staff who upheld the rules, it was the system, the invisible authority that forced everyone into submission. The deeper Sarah got into the investigation, the more she realized how little she truly knew about Angola. Even the most trusted sources were hesitant to speak, and the few who did only spoke in hushed tones. A silence so thick, it felt suffocating. Then came the revelation that sent shockwaves through the prison system. Dwayne Jackson's death was not the result of his own hand, but of something far darker, a hit, ordered by the very syndicate that ruled over Angola. But why? What had he known? What was so important that it led to his untimely death? But before Sarah could dig deeper, her investigation took another unexpected turn. When she reached the prison's archives to examine Dwayne's file, she found that his records were missing. Not just his file, but every file related to Angola's most notorious inmates. Someone was hiding something, and Sarah was determined to find out who. But when they unlocked the basement archives, what they found changed everything. You thought you had the full story, didn't you? Well, think again. The walls of Angola have kept more than just prisoners trapped. They've kept the truth buried deep. Hit that subscribe button and keep watching, because what we're about to uncover is far more sinister than you can imagine. Detective Sarah Matthews felt the weight of the investigation settle heavily on her shoulders as she stepped deeper into the maze of Angola Prison. The walls of this place had held secrets for decades, secrets that not even the toughest inmates dared speak about. And the more Sarah uncovered, the clearer it became. Angola was a prison like no other. It was a world within a world, governed by invisible hands, a shadowy system where power and fear were the currency. The investigation had already taken a disturbing turn with Dwayne Jackson's death, but what Sarah didn't realize was that she was about to discover something that would rock the foundations of the entire prison system. The missing files. That was the first major clue that something wasn't right. It wasn't just Dwayne Jackson's record that had vanished. It was the entire archive of Angola's most dangerous criminals. The warden had initially denied any wrongdoing, stating that the files were simply misplaced. But Sarah knew better. In a prison where every document was meticulously catalogued and locked away, this was no accident. Someone wanted those files gone. Someone with a lot to hide. As Sarah pressed on, the prison's dark underbelly began to reveal itself. She was led to an old forgotten part of the facility, the lower levels, where even the guards rarely ventured. This area had once been used as a storage space for old supplies, but over the years, it had become something far more sinister. The hallways were narrow, the air thick with dust and the musty smell of decay. It was a place abandoned by the prison staff, yet it still held remnants of its past. A past that was beginning to look less like a simple correctional facility and more like the headquarters of an underground empire. When Sarah arrived at the basement, she was met by an unexpected sight. A small group of inmates sitting in a circle around a rusted table, talking in hushed tones. Their eyes darted nervously as they noticed her presence, and for a moment, the tension in the air was palpable. These were men who had been here for years, some for life, yet none dared speak of what they knew about the prison's inner workings. But Sarah wasn't just any outsider. She had spent years investigating dangerous criminals, and she knew how to get to the truth. "Tell me what you know about the files," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm, as she made her way toward the table. The men exchanged looks, their faces shadowed in fear. One of them, an older inmate named Thomas, finally spoke. His voice was low and cracked with years of hard living. "The files were never meant to be found," Thomas said, glancing over his shoulder as though the walls themselves might be listening. "Angola doesn't just keep records of the crimes we commit. It keeps records of the deals that are made in the dark, deals that go beyond the prison walls. Deals that keep this place running and keep the world outside from ever knowing what goes on in here." Sarah's heart raced. She had known that something was off, but hearing this confirmed her worst suspicions. The prison wasn't just a place for punishment, it was a machine, built to keep its operations hidden, a world of corruption and control far beyond what anyone on the outside could comprehend. "But why would they erase the files?" Sarah asked, trying to piece the puzzle together. "What's so important about what's inside those records?" "They didn't just erase them," Thomas replied. "They destroyed the mem. It's not just about us. It's about who's behind this prison. People on the outside, people who pull the strings. They've got deals with politicians, businessmen, law enforcement. Angola is more than just a prison. It's a business. And if anyone found out what really goes on in here, it would destroy everything. The realization hit Sarah like a cold wave. She wasn't just dealing with a corrupt system inside Angola. She was dealing with an entire network of power that extended far beyond the prison's walls. The truth was more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. And now, she was in too deep. But just as Sarah was about to push for more answers, a loud crash echoed down the hall. The sound of footsteps followed, fast and heavy. The men around the table immediately fell silent, their faces turning pale. They knew what that sound meant. "Someone's coming," one of the inmates whispered. "We're not supposed to be here." Before Sarah could react, the door to the basement slammed open, and a group of guards stormed in, their eyes scanning the room. "Detective Matthews," one of the guards barked, his voice low, but filled with authority. "You need to come with us, now." The men around the table quickly scattered, disappearing into the shadows of the room, leaving Sarah standing alone in the middle of the chaos. Her mind raced. Had the prison figured out she was getting too close to the truth? Or had something even more dangerous been set into motion? As Sarah was escorted out of the basement, she couldn't shake the feeling that the walls of Angola were closing in on her. She had discovered just how deep the corruption ran, but now, the question was, who could she trust, and who was truly pulling the strings? But when Sarah stepped out into the yard, her eyes landed on something that made her heart stop. A figure standing in the distance, watching her with cold, calculating eyes. It was Dwayne Jackson. But how? He was dead, wasn't he? Before she could process the sight, the figure disappeared into the shadows. And just like that, everything changed. What had Sarah just uncovered? And why did it feel like someone was playing a dangerous game with her? Stay tuned. The worst is yet to come. If you thought the truth was behind bars, think again. What Sarah uncovered in the darkest corners of Angola isn't just corruption, it's a game that no one can win. The feeling of being watched never left Sarah as she walked back through the narrow hallways of Angola Prison, her mind reeling from the events of the last few hours. Dwayne Jackson's apparent death was just the beginning, and she couldn't shake the vision of his face, staring at her from across the yard. He had been dead. She had seen his body, his cold eyes staring back at her in the cell. But now she wondered, had it been a setup all along? A distraction? And why was he alive, or was it really him? As she stepped into the interrogation room, her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door slamming shut behind her. The air was thick with tension, and Sarah knew that this wasn't going to be an ordinary conversation. The warden entered, his eyes cold and calculating, his presence commanding every inch of the room. There was no small talk, no pleasantries. Just a sharp, threatening silence that hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. "You've been asking too many questions, detective," the warden said, his voice low and steady. "Questions that should have been left alone." Sarah didn't flinch. She had been through worse. "I'm not backing down," she replied, her voice unwavering. "This prison is hiding something far bigger than just a few criminal acts. What happened to Jackson?" The warden's lips curled into a thin, almost imperceptible smile. "Jackson was never meant to leave this place. He never did. What you saw was staged. A show for the outside world, just like everything else." Sarah's blood ran cold. "A show? You mean his death, his supposed suicide, was a lie?" The warden's smile faded, replaced by a more menacing expression. "It wasn't just Jackson, detective. It's the entire system. Angola isn't just a prison, it's a business, a hidden empire. The files you were looking for weren't just about the inmates. They were about the people who run this place." Sarah's mind raced. The files, the secret syndicate, the inmates who lived in fear, the guards who looked the other way. It was all starting to make sense, and yet, nothing made sense at all. This isn't about keeping criminals locked up, the warden continued. It's about control, power, money, and you've been poking around in places you don't belong. The ones who run this place, they'll make sure you never leave. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had come this far, but now the truth was starting to unravel in a way she hadn't prepared for. This wasn't just about uncovering the corrupt prison system. It was about exposing something so much bigger, something that reached beyond Angola's walls and into the highest levels of society. And Dwayne Jackson? Sarah asked again, the question echoing in the silence. What part did he play in all this? The warden's gaze hardened. Jackson was a pawn, a message. And now, you're playing the same game. You think you're uncovering a conspiracy, but what you're really doing is walking straight into a trap. Before Sarah could respond, the door opened again. One of the guards stepped inside, his face grim. Warden, we have a problem. Jackson's cell. It's been opened, and there's something inside. The warden's face twisted in frustration. He turned to Sarah, his tone dark. You've really done it now, detective. Sarah felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. What's in Jackson's cell? She demanded. The warden didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward the door, signaling for Sarah to follow. As they made their way down the narrow, winding halls of Angola, the air grew heavier. The prison's cold, oppressive walls seemed to close in on her. She had been too focused on the prison's secret files, on the mysterious syndicate running Angola. But now she was learning just how far this rabbit hole went. The door to Jackson's cell creaked open, and Sarah's stomach dropped. Inside, the room looked completely normal except for one thing. A set of blueprints covered in red markings was pinned to the wall. The blueprints depicted not just the prison, but a far larger operation. This wasn't just about Angola. This was about a network of prisons, a system so vast it spanned the entire country. The warden's voice broke through Sarah's shock. We weren't just protecting the inmates, detective. We were protecting a system, one that ensures everything stays in place. You've seen the files, you've seen the evidence, but you still don't understand. Sarah's heart raced as she pieced it all together. The syndicate, the fear, the unspoken rules. Angola wasn't just a prison. It was the heart of a network of power that controlled the fates of thousands. And now, she was in the middle of it, trapped between the truth and the forces that would stop at nothing to bury it. As she stood there, staring at the blueprints, a loud bang echoed from down the hallway. The lights flickered. It was time to make a choice: expose the truth, or walk away and save herself. But Sarah knew she couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when she was so close. She turned back to the warden, her voice steady. I'm not done. I'll find out what's really going on here, no matter what it takes. The warden's face twisted into a sinister smile. You think you're the first to try? You'll learn the hard way, detective. And with that, the door slammed shut behind her. The walls of Angola Prison had kept its darkest secrets for decades. But now, Sarah Matthews had uncovered the truth, and it was more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. This was just the beginning. You thought it was over? You don't know the half of it. Stay tuned, because the truth is darker than ever, and you're not ready for what's coming next.